Legend has it a tall, mysterious, faceless figure lurks in the shadows, stalking children. An internet myth that has its roots in old lore. A supernatural figure with multiple extremities to grab many children and drag them off into the forest to his Slenderman mansion, some say. Created by Eric Knudsen in 2009 as a creepypasta internet meme, the character has transcended its creator's vision. The myth of the Slender Man has become so powerful in the minds of some young children that two young girls stabbed their classmate nearly to death. This is the story of the Slender Man. Hi, I'm D.S. Yaxheimer, and this is another edition of The Spectre. This is a topic I wanted to cover for a while, a little bit. Of course, the Slender Man. He is a internet meme created by Eric Knudsen. I mentioned that before. The opening was a internet meme on the creepypasta website. You know, not that familiar with it, honestly. I'm familiar with a lot of the online art and the various stories and other narratives that have been, stories that have been associated with the Slender Man YouTube videos, etc. And the creator of the character doesn't really have an established backstory to the Slender Man. There is actually a movie, an upcoming film coming out, horror film, which I'm not surprised. Obviously, it's the perfect horror film character. He looks sort of like, if you're not too familiar with him, some of the imagery that I put on before the opening, a lot kind of like Jack Skellington from Nightmare Before Christmas. He is a faceless tall figure that wears a black suit, and he has multiple extremities that seem to come out of his back to presumably snatch up children. He is the inspiration for two girls who nearly murdered their classmate, Anissa Weiner and Morgan Geiser, when they were 12 years old, on May 31st, 2014, stabbed their classmate, Peyton, I can't pronounce his name, Leutner. They have weird, it's just too many vowels. Leutner, about 19 times, nearly killing her, and this was to appease the Slender Man. It's remarkable that a 12-year-old could be capable of such a thing. Two 12-year-olds for that matter. And she, the young girl, fortunately, she crawled her way to a nearby bike path where a cyclist found her and called 911, and she was saved. She was within a millimeter of one of the stab wounds, I think hitting a major artery, and she could have died. Which is kind of a... I guess I'm not trying to say that that's a real-life consequence of the Slender Man. I think it's just... it was a rationale for something. I mean, clearly these two girls were in some way, shape, or form deranged, and this is just sort of the narrative they used to justify what they were doing, you know. And they actually left her for dead and went off to the Slenderman mansion, which was in the forest somewhere, which obviously wasn't there. So, nor was the Slender Man. But it is remarkable what the power of a fictional character can have on a young mind. I mean, we all had characters, fictional characters when we were children that we were quite taken with, none of which I can remember inspired me to sacrifice one of my classmates. So, so this is just one of those just situations where, you know, I think there's just there's just a big question mark above it. One girl, I believe it is Anissa Weiner, it's spelled with W-E-I-E-R, so it's kind of, that's why I'm having trouble pronouncing it. She is currently serving 25 years in a mental institution. I think the girls are 15 years old now, and the other girl, Morgan Geiser, is awaiting sentencing. And fortunately, the girl, Peyton Luner, has recovered pretty much fully I saw a documentary on HBO about it several months ago, and the silver lining is the girl survived, which is always good to hear. In these cases, it's just so fucked up. But I'm sort of not just discussing that, but that is, I think, one of the reasons that the Slenderman it's elevated the visibility of this character, and, you know, in a fucked up way, it's probably why there was a movie being made. The movie would have been made eventually, and I think it would have, in any case, but I think it's coming out sooner because of the notoriety surrounding this particular case. I'm not sure what that means for the rights that if Eric Knudsen, the initial creator of it, actually has any rights to this character, if he copyrighted it, so he gets a cut of this, because I can't imagine that would kind of suck if he did create a character and big film company came along, or independent, I don't know who's actually distributing this thing or who produced it, but they come along and they're going to make a lot of money off of it, and you're the dude who essentially created it. But I would imagine he would be getting something, because in this day and age you can't just create a character and take it and, well, you can, but if he's wise, he'll definitely lawyer up and get the rights to the character, get some piece of it. Of course, I don't know, maybe he doesn't want to profit from a character that inspired two young girls to stab their classmate, so it's kind of a double-edged sword there. I don't know, you know, maybe it's got some bad juju attached to it. But I think it's just one of those things. It's like an urban myth. It's like I think it was last year. Well, it's come up. It's had a resurgence over the years. But clowns coming out of the woods and appearing in neighborhoods and luring children. It's kind of a similar myth. I guess the Slender Man has become its own sort of urban myth in the last couple of years, even though we know distinctly what the origin is of the character, but it can still, you know, in a lot of kids' minds become a myth, because, you know, they go online and there's just all this material out there, and stories and things like that kids get caught up in. There aren't just, like, when we were growing up in the 80s, you basically, you know, you had Star Wars and you had, you know, some literature, some children's books, comic books and things like that, and your parents basically knew what you were consuming as far as media was concerned, and literature, and if I want to call comic books literature, but for all intents and purposes. And some of that stuff was dark too, but it wasn't really like the Slenderman character, because it's open-ended. It's not something that was created by an author with a story and distributed as such. It was something that was like, you know, kind of a blank slate. You do what you want with it. You know, here's the character. You create its backstory based on the image, and it gave these young girls license to create this whole, you know, their version of the Slender Man, who they had to appease, and their fantasy got darker and darker as they cultivated it, and that's that's very unfortunate that that was the result of it. I mean, and who knows what their problem is or whatever. It's hard when you hear something like that. It's very, very difficult. I mean, I'm not a child psychologist, nor am I'm not a serial killer profiler, that type of person, or anyone who knows any sort of science behind why people murder and kill. But I mean, you could look at the same thing with the Columbine shooters, who were both young people. They were in their later teens. These girls were 12, and they carried out their assault on their school in a much different way and for different reasons. But for some reason, I don't know where the switch is sort of flipped in their heads, where that becomes okay to them. They sort of relinquish their ability to empathize with other people, so it doesn't stop them from harming others. I guess it's kind of like that id, the id that the superego is supposed to keep in check. And like these two girls, at the point they were stabbing this young girl, I will just venture to say they were all id, kind of like what the Slenderman is, sort of a faceless entity, creature who isn't quite human, who doesn't have any empathy, who takes pleasure in spreading fear and enjoys being feared. It gives him power. So I think that's what this may have attracted these young girls to this character, because the character was all in. It didn't implore them to be considerate or to their fellow human beings, to their classmate in this case. And so that's just, I think, for the child psychologists who specialize, let's say, in this, in child criminal behavior. That's the official name of the field. I don't know. That's what they have to explore, and to presumably prevent these sorts of incidences from happening in the future. But it's so impossible to tell if a kid can seem completely normal and nice and intelligent, and they might do well in school. I mean, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were both good students from all accounts. Dylan even went to the prom with a attractive young girl when like a week before the Columbine shootings. I mean, it's just, and I'm not talking about that, of course, but it's pretty mind blowing. It is. It's mind blowing to think about, and and in the case of the Slender Man, that this myth could inspire such carnage in two young kids. Those are my thoughts on that. I might do, if I go when the Slender Man movie comes out, I'll probably do a review of that and talk about it. If you have any thoughts on this, feel free to leave comments below. My name is D.S. Yoxheimer, and this has been The Spectre. Beware the Slender Man.